Yeah, we're gonna head out to the garage, see if we can't do some work. I think we're gonna take my little friend. These aren't bad. So I'll tell you, if you really want a beautifully smooth cigar. Oh, I thought I had one left. These Rocky Patels. There we go. You want a really incredibly smooth cigar? I gotta get me some more of these. This is my last one. Anyway, let's get to the garage. I have a spare dash for the F350 project truck. Well, in my truck, the oil pressure gauge kind of works. Temp gauge does what it wants. The volt gauge hovers at 8. Then after about 10 minutes driving, it goes over to 18. I know the charging system's working right. It's the gauges are faulty. So I went and bought some gauges. I was going to mount them on the dash or in a pillar, but I got to taking this apart. I don't know if this is going to work or even be a video, but what I'm going to do, this comes apart in pieces. The fuel gauge I'm going to keep, but these set in here like this and clip in. Well, I have already removed the clips for the 3 gauges I bought. So I'm going to notch this, but I'm going to try mounting the oil pressure, the volt gauge, and the water temp gauge. I am going to see if I cannot mount these into the dash, all 3 of them. All right, what I've done so far, you can't remove this piece because this is where one of the plugs come in once you put your circuit board back on. The only prongs I'm putting back in will be these 3, because this is your fuel gauge. This is gauge we're replacing, this one and this one. So what I'm doing is I'm just trying to cut this back enough because this gauge has to sit down in there flush with this. So I'm just gonna, I gotta take this lip out right here all the way around. Then what I'm gonna do is cut a piece of sheet metal and I'm gonna put a slot there so it'll actually go through, and then I'm gonna hot glue gun it here and it'll sit on top of this. That way this will be flush with the other gauges. Just this little bezel will stick out a little bit, but since there's another plate that goes on here, and then you got the plastic that covers all your gauges, so that little bezel will be fine. But we got to get this gauge far enough, and as you can see, we're almost there, so it's going to be close. I might actually have to notch this a little bit, but long as I keep the screw holes, and then I'll just notch, you know, where I have to for the gauge to slide up there. There'll be a gauge here, and a gauge here, and a gauge here. This one I'll have to cut out so the gauge can go down in there, because it sticks up quite a bit. And well, I'm gonna have to cut these 2 out also, you know, so, you know, the back of it, but that's what I'm slowly attempting to do. All right, a little bit more clearancing here, but that's right about where I want it for the 1 gauge. It's got to move over just a smidge more because there's my line, so I'm about 1/8 of an inch farther over, which I have to clean this up. But that one will sit there. This one I'm gonna have to notch this back here, but that almost sits in there. A little bit more cleanup also right there, because I got to come over a little bit more. So I'll have 2 gauges there. I'll be oil, water, and voltage gauge. And This is the fuel gauge here, and then the last gauge, I won't have to really cut any of this. I just got to cut this 3 squares out, so that one will drop right in right there. So then I'll have these gauges for here, here, and here. And but that's what we're going for. I'll probably do this in a couple videos, because I know when my videos get long, it seems like people lose interest. So I'm going to do a little bit more cleanup, so I can at least get these 2 top gauges in, and then I'll probably the second video and doing my sheet metal after that. So, all right, we'll be back in a little bit. Okay, I got that one in there. What I had to do is I just had to cut a slot right there for the very bottom of that bezel. Now that one sits in. Once it gets in there, slide that bezel in and we're good. That gives me enough room for this one here. I'm gonna have to notch this up just a touch more, because I do want the gauges to sit level. But it right about there is where it needs to sit. And then this one is gonna sit here. So I do have cleanup, because when you cut on plastic, it just kind of makes this melted mess. I don't have a ton of time into it. I lit my cigar, and so about half a cigar. So I'm not going to do all the cleanup on camera. If I have to do any more modifications, I will go and show that, but I think this is going to be pretty good. I left this sticking up here because here you have this point, this one, and this one where they sit in there to help keep this from shaking. So I was able to notch around that. It's still got plenty of strength to it. So I got to do a lot of sanding now to get this here cleaned up. I'll clean this up. I do have to raise this notch a little bit, but, you know, like I say, you just get all this melted crap. So, this is going to be part 1, and this is a spare dash, so I'm not cutting up the original. I am going to take my original fuel gauge, because I know that works, and I'm going to put the original speedo in here, because the speedo for this one reads 220-some thousand. I only got 179,000. So I'm gonna, when I swap dashes, I will take my speedo and put back in this cluster, and I'm gonna put my RPM gauge because I know it works, and I'm gonna put my fuel gauge because I know it works. So once I get this all sanded, cut, I'm definitely gonna, as you can see, it's filthy. I'm going to wash it really good, and then we'll start assembly. So it's probably actually going to be maybe 3-part videos. Now, all I'm using is Harbor Freight. 29 bucks, and I bought one of their accessory kits here. So there's my sandpaper for cleaning up. I'm using this little cutoff disc right there. They give you a pretty good... quite a few of them. There's 3 left. That's 4. Looks like another 4 there. Then you got different accessories. So I think this was under $50 at Harbor Freight. The gauges I just bought at O'Reilly's, but well, this is what we're doing. So we'll see you next time.